Pandavaschaiva kim akurvata Sanjaya. So the very first verse of the first chapter starts with Dhritarashtra speaking. He is in his own courtyard along with Sanjaya, who is relaying the information on the battlefield. So he's asking this question to Sanjaya. Oh Sanjaya, this in Kurukshetra they have assembled. Kurukshetra, which is being called as Dharmakshetra. Dharmakshetre Kurukshetre Samaveta Yuyutsavaha. They have assembled Samaveta Yuyutsavaha. Yuyutsavaha means desiring to fight. So who have assembled? Mamakaha Pandavaschaiva. My side, the Kauravas and the Pandavas, they have assembled. And then Kim Akurvata, Sanjaya. Kim Akurvata. What did they do after they assembled on the battlefield? So Prabhupada explains here about Dharmakshetra. So in Mahabharata, Dharmakshetra, not just in Mahabharata, from time immemorial, this Kurukshetra is considered a sacred place of pilgrimage. That is why it is called as Dharmakshetra. Even now, it's considered as a place of pilgrimage. Many performances, ritualistic performances, sacrifices, they are performed in this place. And so that was chosen to be the place of the battlefield. So in the ancient times, the Yuddha was not conducted adharmically. So people would pick a place of dharma as a symbol that a dharmic side would come out victorious. So the Dharma Kshetra, Kurukshetra was chosen in that regard. So Prabhupada first explains, because this Kshetra is Dharma Kshetra, Dhritarashtra, he was highly doubtful about the possibility of his son's ultimate victory. Isn't it? Because it's Dharma is going to be favored. So he was thinking, oh, I know that we have been doing adharma to these Pandavas. So the influence of the holy place, he was really doubtful about the possibility of his son's ultimate victory. So that's why he was asking, what did my sons and the sons of Pandu do? So interestingly, he was differentiating his sons from the Pandavas, even though they are from the same family. He was considering his own sons as the heir for the kingdom and not the Pandavas. So the differentiating factor is clearly seen from his mentality. And he was thinking, naturally, when they assemble, Samaveta Yutsavaha, what did they do? He didn't need to ask that question, because naturally, when somebody assembles on the battlefield, they have to fight, isn't it? But why Dhritarashtra is specifically asking the question, what did they do? Why is he asking the question? Because he was concerned for a few things. One, as I said, this place is Dharma Kshetra, this place of Dharma. So it might have influence on his sons. Maybe they will change from their mentality. And maybe they'll come to a compromise, and maybe they will give off the kingdom to these Pandavas. He didn't want that to happen. He was so hell-bent on getting the kingdom, not for himself, but for his sons. So he was hoping either that, or he was hoping, so he was fearful that his sons might change and not fight, or he was hoping that because of the influence of this holy place, maybe the Pandavas will become saintly, renounced, and therefore they will give up the battlefield and they will go away, not fighting. So he was thinking, is any of these things happening? He was concerned whether his sons would stop fighting, or he was hopeful that the opponents will go away without fighting. That is why he is asking, Kim Akurvata? There was no need for that question, but he was asking, Kim Akurvata? So he was also separating his own side from the Pandavas, even though they are from the same family. Actually, the throne belonged to Pandu because Dhritarashtra was handicapped. And when Pandu died, naturally, Yudhishthira had to become the king. But Dhritarashtra and Duryodhana and his brothers, they usurped the rightful kingdom from the Pandavas. And even after so many compromise arrangements, they would not give. And they, in so many ways, they tried to kill and eliminate the Pandavas, which did not happen because of the protection of Krishna. So you see how he was trying to divide his sons from that of the Pandavas. This is called I, me, and mine mentality. Aham mameti, in Bhagavatam it is said. Aham mama iti means me and mine. The whole world will center around me and mine. And naturally, what will happen? It will cause anxiety. You identify yourself part of somebody, your family, or your community, or your nation, even. I remember in my childhood, so in our neighborhood, we used to have a television, and my dad would bring his friends and a lot of youngsters from nearby streets, and in that street, they would all come and sit and watch this game of cricket. And so the game was happening, India-Pakistan game, and the match has come to a very tense situation. The last delivery was being bowled and something had to happen. And unfortunately, the outcome did not come out in favor of India. India lost the game at that moment. The last delivery was bowled. And then, right at that time, there was this youngster who started to shout and actually collapsed. And he was having seizures, which we called as fits in those days. And everybody was in panic mode, and everybody was coming and trying to give water, throw water, sprinkle water, and all of that. And somebody came and put a key in his hands, and somehow he became all right. And people became so concerned. So I was quite panicked at the time, looking at him. So you see how these players playing for these countries, none of them had any connection with these people, but they chose to identify themselves with a nation. It could be a nation, or it could be a community. It could be your own son. Like people, they accompany their children for the games and they feel so bad when their children do badly. And they support the side where their children are playing, and they don't want to other side to win. And sometimes they go to extreme. We hear cases where people go to extreme to protect people from their family, to protect people from their community, caste, even if the other side is on dharma or the right. No, they want to protect and win. My side should win at whatever cost. So they have heard many stories where a bridge just collapsed and there was an inquiry, and it was found that there was no proper planning, or the whatever cares that had to be taken while constructing, had nothing had been done. And when they inquired, they found that the engineer who was responsible, He didn't even have the proper qualification to be the engineer. He didn't even have the necessary experience. And when they found out that the person who hired the in charge of the project, he hired this engineer because he is from the same caste as this person. And so he hired, rejecting all other qualified people. And you see what happened. So this aham mameti mentality, it puts us in so much of anxiety. It blinds us to reality, like how Dhritarashtra is not only physically blind, but he is blind spiritually also. He's blind to dharma. And then Prabhupada mentions in the purport, Bhagavad Gita is the widely read theistic science summarized in the Gita Mahatmya, glorification of the Gita. There it says that one should read Bhagavad Gita very scrutinizingly with the help of a person who is a devotee of Sri Krishna and try to understand it without personally motivated interpretations. So one should study Bhagavad Gita scrutinizingly. In Chaitanya Charitamrita, it is said, Siddhanta boliya chitte nakara alas. Alas means laziness. When studying Siddhanta philosophy, we should study properly, scrutinizingly, try to understand the reality, the truth, without personally motivated interpretations. Krishna elsewhere in 4th chapter, he says, Tadvidhi pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya upadekshanti te jnanam jnaninas tattvadarshinaha. One should understand this knowledge with pariprashna, with proper inquiry from a realized person. So what happens is, when there is a qualified speaker and a very deserving candidate who hears, qualified hearer, and there is an inquiry about the subject matter, three things happen. Vasudeva Katha Prashnaha Purusham Strin Punatihi Vaktaram Prachakam Shrutrum Tatpada Salilam Yadha. So it is said that Mother Ganga, she is purifying this whole universe, the upper planets, the middle planets, and the lower planetary systems. Similarly, when one asks questions about Krishna and the absolute truth, then three varieties of men are purified. The speaker, the person who inquires, and as a result, the people who listen the katha that comes out. So scrutinizing means not challenging. Scrutinizing means with an intent to clarify, but not challenge. If you challenge, you'll not be able to understand. You're going saying, I know better than you. That is what is called challenge. But one should have submission, pranipata, and then pariprashna. And then to understand the subject matter, you need to do seva to be able to absorb. And the speaker also should be qualified speaker. You cannot go and approach anybody and everybody. One time, our Acharya, Srila Prabhupada, he was trying to get his Bhagavad Gita printed in French. So he needed somebody who can translate this English Bhagavad Gita into French. So the devotees, they were helping him, and they found a French professor, and they were trying to get him to write or to translate what he wrote. But the French professor had one concern. So he said, the French language is a very compact language, and compact language than English. And he was wondering whether he should translate directly from Sanskrit to French and he'll be able to do a better job. In other words, he was saying he will ignore the English that Prabhupada wrote and he would try to write his own things. But Prabhupada, he was correcting him. He said, yeah, you may think that the language you can do justice and you can grammatically and uh, flowery language you can write. You think you may write like that. But to understand, you need to understand the reality. It's not a question of scholarship when it comes to spirituality. The speaker or the person who explains the subject matter must be a realized soul. And he gave an example in India. There are many Sanskrit scholars, but they cannot understand Srimad Bhagavatam, the Bhagavad Purana. Even though one may be a scholar, it's not that they would understand Srimad Bhagavatam. And Prabhupada quoted one instance during Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's time. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's time in Bengal, people would come to him to impress him with their literary prowess. So there was one gentleman who came and he wanted to show Chaitanya Mahaprabhu his poetry. And so he wrote a very detailed poetry. And everybody in general, they were appreciating, oh, what a nice poetry you wrote. And so he wanted to go and meet Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and show and get accolades from him. But before he went there, he had to pass one filter, which is the secretary of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who is Swarup Damodar Goswami. So he presented that poem to Swarup Damodar Goswami, and then he read that poem and he became very angry. So you think you are a great scholar, and by dint of your scholarship, you can understand the tattva about the supreme absolute truth. And he pointed out grave mistakes, how he considered Jagannath to be a piece of wood which doesn't have life. He made a great offense to the deity. The deity is considered non-different from Krishna. But the ordinary people could not detect that. But Swarup Damodar Goswami could detect that. Even though this person was a scholar, he missed out the essence, the truth of spirituality. So therefore, Swarup Damodar Goswami told him, Bhagavata Padogiya Bhagavata Sthane. You have to go and understand Bhagavata from a person Bhagavata. So it's not that one has to be a scholar. In other words, Prabhupada was mildly chastising that French professor. But don't think that just by scholarship, you'll be able to understand and present the tattva of spirituality. One has to be a realized soul. One has to get the authority from Krishna to understand the subject matter and thereby spread this or give this message. So that is why, and then this French professor asked, no, but your English translations, English purports, has a lot of repetition. Therefore, I want to compact it and make it flowery in French language. And again, Prabhupada clarified, saying, the Vedic literature also has repetitions. That is done for emphasis and better understanding. And he gave the example of how Krishna describes the immortality of the soul verse after verse in the second chapter of Bhagavad Gita. And he had a couple of verses read out to him, and the professor could understand. And then he agreed. So this is the thing. So the speaker has to be qualified, and the hearer has to be qualified as well, has to have good, sincere intentions. And if one gets that qualified speaker from the disciplic succession, the proper authorized spiritual master, one becomes fortunate. So, and then Prabhupada mentions in the purport One will find in the Bhagavad Gita all that is contained in other scriptures, but the reader will also find things which are not to be found elsewhere. That is the specific standard of the Bhagavad Gita. Like, for example, Krishna talks about how the Supreme Absolute Truth is a person. The personality of Godhead is described in Bhagavad Gita. You'll not find the details of the personality, how God is a person, in any other scripture. You will not find the details of the modes of material nature, how the Sattva Guna, Rajoguna, Tamoguna is acting on us. You will not find that elsewhere. You will not find the concept of Paramatma in heart, how Paramatma is there, witnessing our activities, allowing our activities. You will not find the concept of karma, reincarnation, kala, this matter, how the matter is energy of Krishna, how the spirit soul is energy of Krishna, how the spirit soul gets the instinct. Like you place a sugar or a sweet in the middle of the room and leave for a few hours, you'll find the ants will come from nowhere. Why? Because Prabhupada explains the super soul is giving the information to the ant. Oh, here you wanted the food, you wanted sugar, here it is, go get it. The baby, the newborn baby, automatically goes for the breast milk. He knows. And who is giving that intelligence to the newborn? So these concepts, the super soul, you'll find the abode of the Lord. No other scriptures will give you. What is the nature of the abode of the God? Love of God. So in one conversation I was hearing recently, Srila Prabhupada was in Iran and his disciples were there and he was talking about Krishna consciousness. And suddenly in the background, there was this namaz going on. And Prabhupada was asking what it means. What is that they were singing? And some of them explained, Prabhupada, it means that they're singing God is great. And Prabhupada appreciated, oh, God is great. That's really nice. And people, because God is great, we need to worship and we need to surrender to God. And then Prabhupada explained how in Krishna consciousness, we not only learn how God is great, that we not only learn that God is great, but how great God is. Like, for example, somebody says you are rich or your neighbor is a rich man. And then, okay, I look at the neighbor and say, okay, he may have a better car than what I have, and he may have a little more money than what I have in the bank balance, therefore he is rich. But somebody were to come and tell, no, he has $100 billion. He is the top one richest man in the country. And then your appreciation and the way you look at that person and the attraction you will have for that person and the attention you will have for that person, it goes to a different dimension altogether, isn't it? And more you become conscious of that person. So similarly, the Bhagavatam, the Bhagavad Gita, it talks about in detail how God is great. And when you learn that, naturally you become Krishna conscious. This is the reason why we need to understand the details of how God is great. Not just in theory understand, yes, God is great and forget. The reason why scriptures give descriptions about God is to make us realize how God is great. Only then we can become properly Krishna conscious. And then Prabhupada mentions how this Bhagavad Gita is the perfect theistic science. So you see that word science. In general, people think the word science has no place in religion. But you see, Prabhupada is using that word science, perfect theistic science. How is this a science? See, science means knowing things as they are. Like if somebody comes and tells you, oh, the sun is just a disk, it's not science because it's not reality, isn't it? Somebody cannot tell, oh, at morning 7 o'clock there'll be sunset. It's not science because it's not reality. Similarly, as I said in one of the introductions to Bhagavad Gita sessions, the conditioned soul has four defects. We have imperfect senses, we are illusioned, we commit mistakes, and we have a tendency to cheat others. So, therefore, with imperfect senses, we cannot get the real knowledge of this world. We may get partial knowledge, but it is prone to mistakes. The real knowledge can be explained by those who don't have this conditioned senses or imperfect senses. Therefore, what Krishna teaches us is absolute reality. When Krishna says, Dehinosmin yatha dehe kaumaram yavanam jara, the spirit soul passes on from the different stages, from childhood to that of youth, to that of middle age, to that of old age, and eventually it passes on to another body at the time of death. This is reality because it is explained by somebody who does not have imperfect senses. And it is quite logical to us. So this is also science. Religion, a bona fide religion, is also science. It's a spiritual science. Just like somebody may say, oh, E equals to MC square. This is science. I'm able to prove it. I'm able to build buildings. I'm able to construct things with this knowledge. But how is it that your religion is a science? So what we need to understand is, yes, material science means you prove it by experiment. Similarly, spiritual science, religion, you can also prove it by experiment and you can experience it. You have to experience it because we don't have the vision to see things changing in our heart. When I follow the spirituality, my heart gets transformed. I develop love of God. I develop detachment for this world. You cannot see that, but I can experience that. So therefore, by following this proper bona fide Krishna conscious religion, which is a science, I see the effect within myself. Therefore, it is also science. It's a different science. In fact, it is the perfect science because it is not prone to mistakes by conditioned souls. So I'll stop here. Any other questions anybody has, you can unmute yourself by pressing the *6. Thank you, everyone. Bhagavad Gita as it is ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Nitai Gaur Premanande, Hari Hari Bol, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.